All right, excellent. Well, we might as well go ahead and get started. A lot to cover today. So I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to our moderator for the day, Chris Tashini. Chris, over to you. Chris, you're on mute. There we go.
Thank you. My apologies. I want to welcome everybody for joining us for this webinar presentation regarding America's energy transition. We have a number of speakers today, and we're happy to invite participation. We will have a question and answer at the end of the presentation, so we hope that you'll be able to participate in that regard. My name is Chris Chitney. I'm a member of the Navajo Nation, and I come from Northern Arizona. I also work as a principal for InPowerLink. We are an energy development group, as well as work in a tribal practice dealing with tribal energy law throughout the country. Today we have a number of esteemed guests, including Director Wahala Johns. We have former council member of Campo Kumeyaay Nation, Michael Conley. We have John Lushetsky from DOE Loans Program Office, as well as our hosts, Scale Microgrid Solutions, Shay Hughes and Guillermo Gomez. So what I'd like to do again is just thank everybody for the opportunity to participate today, and we hope that this will be very helpful for you. Next slide, please. So, as I mentioned, our agenda is to hear from keynote speakers from Department of Energy, as well as from the Campo Kumeyaay Nation regarding experiences in particular here in California, as well as hearing funding opportunities from the Tribal Loan Guarantee Program at USDOE. And then we will also have a presentation from Shay Hughes regarding microgrid technology and policy updates regarding the technology and the energy development aspects of microgrids. Next slide, please. So up first is our esteemed director, and I do know, and most of you do know, Director Johns. She hails from Northern Arizona, member of the Navajo Nation, and is an entrepreneur in her own right, and has a business, Native Renewables, that she had to let go in terms of accepting the new job at USDOE. But we're very happy and very pleased that Director Johns could spend some time with us. So I'm going to turn it over to Director Johns, and she will talk to you.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, all the organizers here today, to Scale, and for this webinar on microgrids. I want to say to all of you fellow Diné people, Navajo. I'm Diné. I'm Salt Clan, born for Red Bottom people from northeastern Arizona. And I'm currently the, they call me Senior Advisor, Acting Director of the Office of Indian Energy. And I've been here in this role for over 100 days now. And it's been such a pleasure to see the historic work of the Office of Indian Energy that stood up nearly 10 years ago, and also to recognize Chris Chitney as a former director, and other directors who have created this program to really meet the needs of tribal nations, to be able to support them to grow out their energy vision. And so I just want to say thank you, Chris, and all of the participants here, and also John Lushevsky from LPO, but also Nicole. Thank you for helping to organize this talk today on microgrids. So we, if you don't know about Department of Energy or Office of Indian Energy, just wanted to highlight some things since we have, this is over about 100 days that I've been in this role. Priorities for this administration is combating the climate crisis, creating clean energy union jobs, and promoting energy justice. These are huge, ambitious priorities that, as you can tell, and our climate is changing rapidly and seasons have been changing. Things have been happening more as far as weather patterns and emergency impacts that are coming to our communities in remote locations, but also urban communities, just like um, the impact that it's had, like these freezing storms on our nation's grid. And but also too, as Indigenous peoples, we have been seeing the climate changing for over 30 years now. And some communities are at the forefront of this, the impacts where communities are needing to relocate. And so we're seeing climate refugees happen in Indigenous territories. So this is a recognizing that we all have a role to play in the way that we are designing our future. And energy is a big part of that. It empowers everything that we use every day and our homes. And how can we do that in a way that is sustainable and that can leave something for the future generations? So this calling of, taking action and being in this role and has been really a learning curve, but also the people at DOE and other federal agencies in this administration and the career folks just have a huge dedication to a public service. And I'm just really in awe of the amount of work, just like Chris had a role in this office. So I just want to say that it's really fun and hard and really committed. With these priorities in mind, there's a lot of alignment with the Office of Indian Energy. If you don't know, again, we established in 2005 through the Energy Policy Act, and is charged by Congress to promote Indian energy development, efficiency and use, reduce or stabilize energy costs, enhance and strengthen Indian tribal energy and economic infrastructure relating to natural resource development and electrification, and bring electrical power and service to Indian land and the homes of tribal members located on Indian lands or acquired, construct, or improve with federal funds. So the goal for of these values and our statute is to support American Indian communities and Alaska Native villages to achieve their energy vision. And we do this through providing financial assistance, technical assistance, education, and capacity building. So we offer financial assistance through competitive grants. And a lot of these initiatives are the FOAs, federal opportunity, that we have been that we have been offering to tribes is a process where tribes plan and apply for these grants and to do deployment and projects. So getting hardware in the ground. And I think there are over 180 projects that this office has supported, invested over $85 million into tribal nation projects. So it's really an amazing 10 years of looking back and seeing the cost savings that these projects have created for tribes, and also the capacity building when we do invest in or our tribes get this funding and deployment efforts, it builds internal capacity within tribal nations. And so there are several microgrid projects that the Office of Indian Energy has supported, about 9 of them. And some of those projects have demonstrated that kind of the values that we as Office of Indian Energy is supporting is that self-determination, that self-reliance, and that cost saving. And in some cases, also where climate change is happening in nearby um, reservations or townships, that there's emergency backup. And so that's is where we've seen some of these microgrid projects and ideas have that concept in mind, is like, if there was an emergency, we want to have a backup energy generation that is there to support our emergency facilities like hospitals and schools and tribal buildings. So this is some of the work that we have been doing, and I can highlight some of those examples. One tribe that is leading the way is the Calusa Indian community in California. I'm sorry if I mispronounced that, who has been operating a 6 megawatt cogeneration microgrid. And we have been also looking at supporting remote communities. I'm gonna butcher this name, is Iguagig village, sorry, of Alaska. It's one of 250 remote communities in Alaska that rely on isolated diesel power microgrids, and has been leveraging DOE funds to help integrate power produced from the Vitchak River and battery storage into their diesel powered microgrid. And I think that there's one also project that is on our website. If you go to our DOE website, the Bad River Band of Wisconsin, it's a 500 kilowatt solar microgrid installation. And this is to power critical facilities in the event of future disasters. So these, there's more examples, but I think the idea is that for our financial assistance and technical assistance that we offer is to help seed these, tribes and their wishes and their wants, and that they plans for energy expansion in their communities, that we help that. And that they also are, I think that the neat thing is that it continues the growth of these ideas, because it's built capacity internally, and looking at other ways of expanding energy generation. So the other thing I wanted to highlight is that being new in this role is coming up with some priorities for this office. And I mentioned the administration's priorities around environmental justice and climate. But I think for Indian country, it is known that tribal members, tribal communities pay a lot more the cost, or pay a lot more money on energy than the average American. And this is around kind of the energy burden or energy poverty area, where still thousands of families don't have access to electricity, especially in the Southwest. So energy access is one priority that we'd like to address in Indian country. But also some of the kind of remote rural areas in villages and remote locations in different parts of Indian country that don't have access to transmission, and spend a lot of money on energy needs throughout the year. And so we want to figure out solutions and support on technology that can help be able to sustain tribal homes and tribal communities. The other piece is around energy transition. As you've been hearing a lot with the American Jobs Plan, we are excited about creating a diversification of our energy and expanding in clean energy development and renewable energy development. And we know that there's a lot of tribes that have, fossil-based economies and are facing some places closure of coal-fired power plants and facilities, or will be closing soon. And so, in thinking about that, this administration has compiled a report on coal impacted communities and opportunities of transitioning, and diversifying their economy, and IDing, I guess, funding interagencies to support these communities. And a lot of these communities are tribal communities or tribal nations. So energy transition is a big part of our kind of these next few years will be focused on that and supporting tribes. The other area is just also continuing to support the existing work of the around climate and renewable energy capacity building through tribal colleges, universities, and institutions that are within tribal nations, and also how we can all build our internal capacity within community. And I think that's really exciting, and we have a lot of ideas of how that could work. And the other piece for me is that I really see tribes leading the way in this energy transition, but also being the kind of the 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 beacon. I feel like for historically, from time immemorial, tribes have had a really strong connection to who we are and our language and our identity, and to nature. And I feel like there's a lot that we can learn from the traditional ecological knowledge that we have within our um, our teachings. And so I'm excited about using these teachings to guide the way we are going into the future. And the other piece I wanted to say is that there is going to be a lot of opportunity for tribes. There's this initiative called the Justice 40, and there was an executive order. I think it's 13. I have to remember it. Oh gosh, but it was an executive order related to environmental justice, where it's 13985, and it's on equity, and where 40% of clean energy investments are going to be geared towards underserved communities and people of color communities, and tribes. And so this is a huge opportunity, and want to make sure that you are aware of that, and that this administration is really wanting to support the way that we are investing and thinking through this clean energy transition, and that our communities are included. So I think that's all I have for now, and I'm really glad that you all invited me to speak today. And I hope we can partner with tribal and Alaska Native communities in their energy transition, and help support the visions that you all have for your communities and your nations. So yeah, thank you.
Wahela, thank you. Aloha. We're very grateful for your words and bringing a number of these issues, and we trust that the office will be in good stead because of your leadership. So thank you again for your comments. So I'd like to do now is turn over to Formal Council and Michael Conley from from Campo Kumeyaay Nation. Michael brings a lot of experience. He directed one of the first tribal EPA agencies in the US, implemented a number of traditional environmental practices. He's also been active with NCAI, the National Tribal Environmental Council, Good Neighbor Environmental Board, and several US EPA advisory committees. He does have expertise in a number of areas, including working on taxation policies and impediments to sustainable tribal economies. And so it is in that area that we I've asked him to share a few words regarding some of the challenges and barriers with development in California. He has a Bachelor of Science in Mechanical Manufacturing Engineering and a Master of Arts in Economics. He's also an adjunct faculty, American Indian Studies at San Diego State University, and has served 17 years in elected office for the nation. And so we're very happy to have Michael here with us. So I'll turn it over to you, sir.
Thank you, Chris. Okay, make sure I'm unmuted there. Hauka, good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to go over some of the things that happened in our explorations into the energy sector from the Campo Kumeyaay Nation and how that relates to some of the bigger picture and what we've seen in other areas of the country. About 16 years ago, the Campo Kumeyaay Nation embarked on a commercial scale wind energy project, and it was the first one on a reservation of that magnitude at the time. And when we got into it, we were really we had no capital. We had nothing to invest. We had to bring in outside investors to do this project, and it was a long time in the making. We had actually had wind studies that had been going on for over 15 years prior to this time. So we knew we had a good wind resource. We had a very accessible area on the reservation. We had access to 500 kV transmission lines through our area. So everything looked like it was really prime for us, especially with the incentives that were being offered. But the way the incentives are structured, they're structured toward the private sector, and if you're not a tax-paying entity, there's no way there was no way to really use it at the time. There were some ideas that people had, but none that were really viable. So we essentially went in with a basic lease to a developer to come in and put in the project. We were successful in getting it in. It didn't make as much money as we would have liked, but it was an important part of diversifying our economic base, and it helped us through the Great Recession and also through the COVID. There were other parts of the development that were also a challenge. Getting through the NEPA process was really a difficulty. The loan programs were really not geared towards something this large, and this was a $75 million project to get it put in, and there wasn't any pool of money that was available where we could have tapped into that. So an important part of the loss of revenue to the community involved the tax base. And so by bringing in outside developers, what it did was it opened the door for California to come in and impose a tax, because if assets are owned by a non-Indian on the reservation, the state asserts their taxing authority. So they were able to collect a sales tax off of the development of 8%, of which none was shared back with the tribe, and they were able to assess a property tax. Since that time, Department of Interior has revised their rules on the property tax, but it was done in a rulemaking. The language is still kind of weak. We hope it will hold up, but time will tell on that. We still have the issue of the sales tax. We only went in for 50 megawatts of the potential on the reservation, and we have subsequently looked at another project, a 160 megawatt project, and one of the things that we did was we formulated within this provision so that as we move ahead on the property tax, and as we establish our authority as the only property taxing authority on the reservation, that we'll be able to, it's already built into the lease agreement that we'll be able to get that revenue. We also asserted a TERO tax, Tribal Employment Rights Tax, and that's a 5%. So that partially offsets the loss of the sales tax. And we're still working in California to try to change the sales tax provisions. Not all states are the same, and there are states that some of them actually return the sales tax back to the reservations. There's others that do a partial return to the reservations, but California, it's 100% of the tax goes to the state. None of it goes back to the reservations. So even though we are providing the governmental services to these facilities, we're providing the fire protection, the security, the infrastructure, the environmental protections. All of these things are being done by the tribe, but yet the states still have this ability to come in and take taxes. There have been some efforts from the Treasury Tribal Advisory Committee to identify a lot of these issues of dual taxation, because it affects a lot of different types of economic development on reservations. And we also, within the last dual taxation report at Treasury, there was a lot of discussion also specifically of these issues regarding energy projects and the impacts. We were also able to go in and use some of the programs within the state, and one of them was the net meter program, and we were able to put a turbine in at our casino. Once again, we had to bring an outside developer in to do it because we didn't have the capital resources within the reservation, especially, and here you run into a problem even if you are able to get funding from different federal programs. Because it's a casino, a lot of times they won't let you use federal program dollars for casino operations. So there again, we end up being forced having to turn it over to an outside entity, something that maybe potentially we could have owned ourselves. We could have borrowed the money and done it. We were able to put a 1.5 megawatt net meter turbine at our casino, which reduces our energy costs by over 50% at the casino. Within both of these projects, we included provisions so that we do have an opportunity to buy out at some time in the future. There again, attracting capital is a big issue that goes along with that. The NEPA issue has been there was an attempt to create a tribal energy resource agreement provision that would allow tribes to assume some of the responsibility or all of the responsibility for pushing through the NEPA process. The original language was really problematic. We came very close to actually getting approved for a Terra, and then we decided not to do it. The Hearth Act was another legislation that I think is much better for allowing tribes to assume that authority, but it doesn't go as far in some of the energy projects as we need. There have been revisions to the Terra, and I don't know if any tribes have gone completely through that process yet, but the last I saw it looked much better. Unfortunately, the rulemaking was done a little too late for us. We were already in our next 160 megawatt project, so we were unable to. It would have set us back having to go through the whole approval process for that. We're continuing to also work with the Public Utilities Commission. We've been working on distributed energy systems, and a lot of the tribes in California have been taking advantage of that. We have, as most people know, we've had our utilities in California have been doing shutdowns whenever there's fire danger, and the shutdowns occur primarily in the rural areas where there's a lot of fire hazard, and that's the areas where most of the reservations are also. So the tribes have been disproportionately impacted by these shutdowns. The state has come forward with a lot of programs for energy, distributed energy systems on homes and solar systems, and also for battery backups. And Campo, along with many other tribes in California, has been an active participant in these programs to help offset some of these impacts from the shutdowns. We were able to do a partial microgrid at our casino area and separate it out from the grid, because when there was a major shutdown, none of the gas stations were working, and our casino was the only place that, because we had backup generators, it was the only place that was working. And so we, by default, became an evacuation center when some of the big fires hit San Diego. and so we just made it official, and we also got the utility to separate us out. So when they do an intentional shutdown of the grid, they leave alone the area around the casino, because that we also have a service station there, and that and we also have provisions that are set up there by the Red Cross. So we have become and made that part of an evacuation center. So that was one of the ways to approach the microgrid. There's more money coming in, more incentives for microgrids, both nationally and on the state level. And so a lot of tribes are starting to look into that, but you still have the issues. You still have to deal with some of these issues regarding the tax parity, and whether you can implement your things like a Terra ordinance through this, or have some type of buyout provisions for facilities if you're bringing in outside capital and outside ownership. So that's the I think how am I doing on time? Okay. So that's kind of in a nutshell where we've been on energy development. This 160 megawatt project that we're currently working on has finished the EIS process. We've had some off reservation facilities that were needed to access the grid, and those have gone through their approvals. There's a little bit of litigation before we can actually start construction, but we're pretty close to that point now. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Michael. So as you can hear, for our audience out there, there's a number of challenges, and some of these require pretty much a whole day to spend on it. But what we wanted to do is give you a snapshot of the challenges out there. So thank you again, Michael. Just a quick note to our panelists, if you can turn up your volumes, so just make sure folks can hear you out there in the universe. And then I'd like to introduce our next speaker, John Lushetsky from Department of Energy's Loan Program Office. He's a senior advisor there, has experience both in the private and government sectors, and is working really to support tribal energy development with the loan guarantee program that has been designated for tribes. John's main challenge is to do this given development and what Indian country has identified as the #1 policy priority. And then you double down with the challenges with COVID over the last year. So John, stage is yours.
Great, thank you, Chris. And Nicole, you can take the slides down. I'll just I'll talk without slides, and but certainly leave those for all the participants. And certainly welcome everyone's questions. I do have a conflict at 5 o'clock, but my colleague Brian Mahar will take over here and answer any questions on the program that you might have. But certainly appreciate the opportunity to be here and to speak, and appreciate the invitation from Scale and to join fellow panelists. I think the #1 message is certainly we join with our colleagues in the Office of Indian Energy as part of a Department of Energy-wide effort that Wahala mentioned to improve our engagement, our consultation with Native American and Alaskan Native villages and tribes, and very supportive of efforts on the parts of tribes in terms of self-determination, access to energy, energy affordability, and economic development. And certainly all the things that Wahala said, want to echo and amplify from the standpoint of the Loan Programs Office at the Department of Energy. The LPO exists alongside our sister offices like Office of Indian Energy to provide debt capital to a number of different types of energy projects. We actually administer several different programs, and actually there are two that I want to highlight here that are should very much be in the conversation for tribes as they look at specifically microgrid solutions, but also other types of energy projects as well. But in doing that, the LPO would like tribes to think of us as an office within DOE that can provide capital, can work in different types of financing structures. But also, I think the most important thing is that we want to be a long-term partner with the project, with the tribe, as a particular energy project is put together and as it operates over its life cycle. We recognize a lot of the challenges that are involved in putting together projects, both technical challenges, financial challenges, and we recognize that it's a long-term process. And even once a project is up and running, that is a long-term asset that will be there providing both economic development and energy benefits for a tribe. And during the life of a project, sometimes things go great, sometimes you hit some speed bumps, but you need a strong partner on the financing side, and certainly the LPO would like to provide that strong partnership working with Native American tribes and villages. The two programs that we really want to highlight here are number one, the Tribal Energy Loan Guarantee Program. This is a program that is relatively new for us. It was on the books for a number of years, but it really wasn't formally appropriated until 2017 by Congress, and we didn't really launch it until 2018. And so given that, and given, I think, a lot of the interruptions a lot of tribes experienced in terms of their energy plans due to COVID, that's a program that still is very, very much new. It's one that's still new for us. It's one that we're still learning about in terms of how we present it to tribes and how tribes can best utilize it. But it certainly represents, I think, a great resource for tribes when they look for energy projects, whether they're microgrid projects or other types of projects. Under this particular program, we have over $2 billion to help tribes out in their energy projects by providing loan guarantees. So a loan guarantee in this particular program would be provided to a regulated lender or another lender who has already kind of looked at the project for the tribe and is satisfied with it in terms of its overall viability and bankability. And then they would come to the Department of Energy's Loan Programs Office to receive a guarantee. So I guess the key thing is a bank needs to be involved in terms of this program. And that is ultimately the group that we would provide a guarantee to. But we encourage tribes to come and talk with us early on in the process. You don't need a bank to come talk with us. If you're thinking about a project, if it's a microgrid project or other type of project, then it's certainly a good time to come talk with us. We can maybe be also helpful in pointing you to particular banks that we're familiar with that might also be able to help you in the project development process and ultimately in the financing process. The only real requirement on this program is that there be 51% tribal ownership, 51% ownership at the tribe sovereign level. And we recognize in some cases that's a challenging requirement for tribes, but we also are working and looking for ways that we can be more flexible on that. One of the ways that we're looking at, especially as it relates to microgrid structures or microgrid projects, is looking at tax equity type structures where an additional tax equity partner would be brought in, and the tribe would then, through a parent holding company, provide equity and debt through the Loan Programs Office loan guarantee. We can talk with you in more detail about that, but it allows tribes to both take advantage of the Loan Programs Office program, but also take advantage of the investment tax credit that is available to solar projects and solar plus storage and microgrid projects. So that's one area that certainly we understand that there's a lot of interest in microgrids, and this is one way that tribes can use this program. Another program that we have is referred to as the Innovative Energy Technology Loan and Loan Guarantee Program. This is a program that has been around for a while. It is a program specifically oriented toward innovative technologies and technologies that reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And certainly many microgrids, maybe not all, but many microgrids would be able to take advantage of this program as well. And so we have over $4 billion available on that particular program. Again, it would provide a great resource for tribes looking at microgrids or other types of energy projects. And again, the best thing we can say is that come talk to us about your project as soon as you have some idea of what it is, or if you're in advanced stages of development, perfect time to come talk with us. That particular program is a direct loan program, so you don't need a bank necessarily in terms of the financing, but we can have those conversations with you when you reach out to us. That's pretty much it. We can talk more about structuring financing, prospects of how the loan is eventually repaid, aspects of additional investors or partners that can be brought in to the project. But we recognize that certainly both of these programs can provide a significant resource for tribes. We certainly recognize the need for microgrids in tribal communities and how they can play a very, very effective role with tribes, either with their existing businesses like casinos and hospitality, or just providing basic energy to reservations themselves. So Chris, I'll turn it back over to you. My contact information will be available, and look forward to your questions, or if you want to reach out to us directly, would be happy to engage with you at that point. So Chris, back to you.
Thank you, John. Much appreciation for all the good work that you're doing. And I think, folks, if just looking down the road, hopefully COVID is, folks are getting that under control, but one of the seminal events is coming up this summer, and I believe both Indian Energy and LPO will be at that gathering, which is at the annual RES conference. So I'm sure Brian can fill in the details on that. So we look forward to seeing you there, John.
Yep, absolutely, Chris. Thanks for that. Thanks for that shout out.
So let's turn it over now to the main event with Shay Hughes. I was taking a cross look at our panelists, and I just thought, man, we need to smile a little bit more. And so a little bit of humor in there. But Shay is one of the principals in terms of leadership for Scale Microgrid Solutions. He works out of the West Coast and has a number of years and experience in dealing with microgrid development international as well. So Shay, let me turn it over to you.
Thank you very much, Chris, and thank you to the rest of our panelists. That was fantastic. Certainly learned a lot. So thank you again, and to all the attendees for joining us this afternoon. So we've got another little mini agenda within the main agenda that we reviewed at the beginning of the presentation here. So the next 20 minutes or so, we're going to go through a number of items. And the first topic is just to give a little bit of background on my company, Scale Microgrid Solutions, and our partnership with Chris Tashini's firm, MPL, why we created this partnership to serve tribal communities across the US. We'll also touch on a little bit of Microgrid 101 for folks that the terminology and the concept is a little bit new. And then I'll give a high-level recap of grants and policies that we're tracking that will facilitate microgrid development on tribal lands. And then for the back half of this presentation, I'll turn it over to my colleague Guillermo Gomez, who's really leading our tribal energy initiative here from within Scale. Guillermo will discuss in more depth why microgrids are important for Indian country. He'll talk about steps to get to a shovel-ready project, and he's at the end he's going to announce our first ever Energy Independence Award. So exciting stuff coming up over the next 20 minutes. We'll try to wrap this up in that time frame to leave plenty of time for Q&A. And so as we go through this, again, please submit your questions through the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen, and we should have plenty of time to get to those. All right, so a little bit about Scale Microgrid Solutions. So We are a vertically integrated distributed energy platform. At our core, we're primarily a team of engineers and energy developers. And more recently, we raised a large equity fund through a firm by the name of Warburg Pincus, which allows us to bring the financing for these types of projects also under one roof, which brings a lot of synergies and ultimately savings that we can, and efficiencies that we can pass along to our customers. We see the future of energy as distributed, and our goal is to provide our customers with cheaper, cleaner, and more reliable electricity. And so to that end, we have two main divisions of the company. The development side of the business, our microgrid solutions team. This is the team that really builds on decades of experience designing, building, owning, and operating microgrids and other complex distributed energy systems. And the financing team, as I mentioned, is a newer addition from last year and a half or so that we refer to as our capital solutions team. And they're really focused on investing in and acquiring distributed energy projects that have been developed by other groups and need to be refreshed or repowered, or there's additional benefits that we can bring to that project from the technical expertise that we have. So as I mentioned, we find a lot of value in pairing the technical and the financial expertise under one roof. And by doing so, we're able to deliver a lot lower cost of energy to our clients through pretty innovative energy as a service type structures that we'll talk about a little bit more as well. So that's a very high level about scale. And I'll turn it back to Chris just for a minute here to give a little more background on NPowerLink.
Thank you, Shay. So for our attendees, Chris Deschitney, I'm by trade an attorney, also an engineer, and recently worked with a number of my colleagues and formed NPowerLink, which is dedicated really to work on transmission and work on solutions regarding transmission throughout rural and Indian country. We also have a business model that centers on microgrids, and NPL was fortunate to partner with Scale to find innovative solutions for tribal communities throughout Indian country. And our main effort is really to provide tribal-led, tribal professional services and solutions for business development, project development, and technical and financial due diligence. Again, we are proud to work with Scale on solutions, and we're happy to answer any questions. With regards to our partnership, NPL and Scale built this partnership to find these solutions for Indian country. And as you can see there, there is a picture of myself and a colleague, Sam Woods. Sam and I have been working on a number of projects between ourselves for tribes for the last 2 decades. And what we have been able to do is offer real and resilient solutions for tribes across Indian country. And for us, the added, the added support by being able to team up with a group like Scale and other partners that we have really helps bring these real, resilient and affordable solutions to Indian country. Next slide, please. So let me give it back to Shay, and I'd be happy to answer any questions at the conclusion of this presentation.
Thank you, Chris. And just to add on the previous slide, you don't need to go backwards, but just to add on that, the complementary skill sets of our 2 groups kind of coming together, the Scale and the NPL side, it's one of the most exciting initiatives I've been a part of at Scale. And it really allows us to, the synergies that we bring to development on tribal lands, allows us to kind of not only, navigate the complexities of tribal politics and, federal aid programs and really lean on the NPL team for their experience in both of those arenas. But again, then to also kind of finance and to execute execute and build the type of energy infrastructure that's so desperately needed on tribal land. So really excited about this. And, at this point, consider Chris and Sam and the team as friends. And, the great work that we're doing together is just, it's one of the, high points of my time at Scale so far. So thanks, Chris. Getting into a little bit about microgrids. We'll just spend a couple of minutes talking about some of the basics, microgrid 101. It is sort of a buzzword in the energy community right now. There are a lot of different definitions floating around, and even many different types and flavors of microgrids, from microgrids on a community scale, and really all the way down to the household level. And so just to kind of level set the playing field and what we're talking about today and the types of systems that we build at scale, we focus on building behind the meter single customer microgrids for municipalities, tribal lands, of course, and the general kind of commercial and industrial sector. These microgrids consist of a variety of different distributed energy resources. On the slide here, you'll see solar PV, you'll see battery energy storage, you'll see natural gas dispatchable generator on there as well for long-term resiliency. But we are technology agnostic, and from time to time we incorporate different technologies into our microgrids. But we've really found over the years that in most use cases, these are the three assets that provide the right combination of attractive economics, resilience, and sustainability. And of course, I need to mention that the defining feature of a microgrid is the ability to disconnect or island from the macro grid, the utility, and operate autonomously for a period of time. So that period of time could be hours, could be days, could be weeks. Most of the time, the systems that we're building are able to operate for days to weeks indefinitely, which we've seen as a huge asset given the current state of the grid in California, Texas, and certainly along the eastern seaboard as well. So that's kind of the basics of the types of microgrids that we're talking about today. This is another kind of neat chart that we put together, really just to show how do all of these different systems, all these assets work together. And this particular example that's shown here is for a day while the microgrid is connected to the grid, right? So a lot of people talk about microgrids in the context of resiliency, when the grid goes down, which that's, certainly, one of the main reasons customers come to us and say, hey, we need a microgrid. But what a lot of folks don't understand also is that the microgrid can actually generate a lot of value in terms of savings from the utility grid during normal kind of blue sky conditions. So as an example, in the middle of the night on the chart here, on the all the way left-hand side of the chart, you see the utility is still there. The utility is affordable. We're using it to meet the facility's load. In the morning, when the electric load spikes a little bit, we are able to kind of automatically discharge the battery in that microgrid and reduce demand charges from utilities, saving money there. When the sun comes up, of course, the solar PV starts producing a lot of electricity. It meets most of the facility's load. It even sometimes, has additional capacity to recharge the battery. And then in certain markets, like where I live and where we operate quite a bit in California, there is differential utility pricing at different times of the day. And so in the late afternoons, utility prices are the most expensive, right? And so there's an opportunity to discharge that battery in the evening, further reduce your utility bill. And in this example here, we're also showing, the natural gas generator kicking on as well for maybe a few hundred hours a year. So that natural gas engine, again, instead of just sitting there as an asset that is only providing resiliency, is also creating economic value for the customer, and in this case, the tribe, which can, that money can kind of go back into the community. So that's a little bit on the basics of microgrids. I think next slide, please, Nicole. In summary, I guess, gonna wrap this up. Why microgrids? We're a little biased, but we think that microgrids offer the most resilience and the most energy security of any technology on the market today. When you look at the status quo options, standby diesel generators come to mind. Those are costly, those are dirty, those are unreliable. And batteries, we love batteries. We use them in most, if not all, of our projects. But by themselves, they're uneconomic for long durations of time. And as I mentioned, this point on the left here, reducing utility costs when the grid is operating, so saving money while providing that resiliency. Before I hand it over to Guillermo, I want to summarize, and we've touched on a couple of these items, John and Wahela from our previous speakers, but just to kind of put a bow on some of the grants and policies that we're following here at scale. The DOE, obviously, following what they do very, very closely. They've had a lot of great grant programs in the past, and we're excited to learn what else is in the pipeline. A couple of these we have listed here: the Tribal Community Resilience Grant, community scale energy generation. Lots of programs. I'd encourage all of you to reach out to Wahela to learn a little bit more about what else is coming from DOE. And then of course LPO, which is a part of DOE, but thought I'd give them another shout out here with the great programs that I won't try to recap the same way that John did, but he's got some material that we can distribute to all of you after the fact to talk a little bit about the loan guarantee program. Really exciting program available to tribal communities. Another incentive program that is, this one's specific to California, but it's worth mentioning given that it's probably the most attractive battery incentive in the country. These grants are for anywhere from about $300 a kilowatt hour to $1,000 a kilowatt hour for battery energy storage. The criteria, it depends on where the project is located, what type of facility it's serving, but very, very attractive grant through the SGIP program. The American Rescue Plan is another really, really exciting act that's kind of still coming together, and a lot of the details are yet to be released. But what we know is that there's $31 billion that's going to be allocated to Native communities. And the important thing about this plan is that later this year, when all of this, the details of these grant programs and various other opportunities are announced, it's important to become shovel ready, to have projects that are ready to be built, right? And my colleague Guillermo will get into just a quick kind of synopsis of the key steps that we think are necessary to get to that point. The FEMA has another program, the Building Resilient Infrastructure in Communities, or the BRIC program. This program is eligible, or state and local governments as well as tribal communities are eligible to apply for the FEMA BRIC grants, which include microgrids, and the next round of applications will be open in January of 2022. And last but certainly not least, policies are a big part of what we do as well. And so just to mention kind of three of the key policies that we're tracking right now at the federal level. The Green Act is, there's really a lot of bills in the Green Act, but kind of the most important for this conversation is a mechanism that allows for the direct payment of the investment tax credit for solar. So this makes it easier for developers and entities without taxes to use that tax credit. The Microgrid Act, this is actually an act that we've helped to co-author with Representative Pineda out of California. And this is really designed to allow the ITC credit to apply to not just the solar, but the microgrid controls as well. And finally, the Clean Energy for America Act. This is also another act that has quite a number of different bills. But again, what's important here is a technology neutral investment tax credit that is based on carbon emissions reduction. So if your project creates a net zero or carbon negative building, then you get the ITC for the whole project. So lots and lots of stuff going on, more announcements, to come, throughout the remainder of the year. But ultimately, I discussed this with you today because we are here to kind of help integrate this grant funding and DOE loans into our financing packages if desired, to lower or just completely eliminate the cost for tribal communities to develop microgrids. So that's it for me, and I'll turn it over to my colleague Guillermo Gomez to talk about microgrids for Indian country. Thanks.
Perfect. Thank you, Shay. Once again, my name is Guillermo Gomez, and I'm here to discuss quite a few things for you guys. I'm going to try to be quick and to the point, but I'm really excited about this topic. And so, yeah, we can go ahead and get started. You can. So when it comes to electrification on tribal trust lands, there's really two options on the table. One is expanding utility service or building more utility scale power plants, and the other option is microgrids. Both of these have their own unique benefits and challenges, and here I will describe the values that microgrids can provide. So in terms of environmental impact, microgrids substantially reduce carbon emissions by either eliminating or limiting the use of fossil fuels. That's one big thing, big impact on the environment. But the other is that they require less modifications to the land. Utility expansion many times requires trenching, digging, and terrain modifications. And so this is an important topic when it comes to vulnerable or endangered species. The next value is accelerated electrification for off-grid locations. Basically, microgrids can be built faster than the time it takes for the utility provider to get out there and put in a new service or upgrade an existing service. Decreased service cost, decrease in service costs, electrical service costs. Wahela mentioned this. Traditionally, tribal communities are being charged a lot more for electricity because they're in these remote locations. So, and they don't really have a choice in this. The utility can increase their rates without really any input from the tribe. So microgrids can kind of put back this power and decision making to the tribe and reduce these costs of the utility from the utility. And then there are also some community benefits to the entire community, not just the receiving end use customer of the microgrid. And I'll describe some of these. One of these is increased stability of the local grid. So by having a microgrid on the local grid of the community, the microgrid can take some of this load off the main grid and basically prevent blackouts and power quality issues for the remaining customers. Another benefit for the local community is the integration of local variable energy resources. So tribal lands are rich in resources, but every location is going to have different resources that may be hydro, wind, solar, different types of fuels. And so with microgrids, you can have some flexibility here and overall, benefit the entire community and reduce the cost. And then we also have economic security and future infrastructure. This is basically, if we can eliminate blackouts and power quality issues with a microgrid, we're really future proofing and protecting either your hospital, your casino, resort for the future. Climate resilient infrastructure that can provide emergency services for the entire community in the event of an emergency. So in an emergency situation, people with critical medical needs can be directed to an area where there is a microgrid. So for instance, if they have critical medical equipment, respirator equipment, this is where a microgrid becomes invaluable in an emergency situation. Job creation, from the obvious reasons of being able to expand a business, put a business where there wasn't power before, that's going to create jobs. But also, I can speak for our company, we plan on utilizing local contractors when building these systems and hiring, local solar companies, and also bringing on salaried employees when it comes to operating and monitoring these systems. And community engagement. We want, part of this endeavor and the reason we're doing this is to have community participation in the process of designing an energy system. And this can really promote kind of educational projects and also promote ecotourism. And so in order to utilize these benefits that I've described above, we've developed a unique microgrid for Indian country, which we call Rapid Response Modular Microgrid, R2M2. And so, Shay mentioned a lot of the details on kind of the technology of this. So I'll try to, get through this as quickly as possible. But basically for this rapid response R2M2 microgrid, we've chosen a set of industry proven components. I mean, we are technology agnostic and we can utilize emerging technologies, fuel cells, different types of new energy storage technologies in our projects. But for this R2M2, we're using PV, battery energy storage. For the solar, we're utilizing either local or some of our selected partners throughout the country to provide the solar aspect of the microgrid. For the battery energy storage system, our partner here is Tesla. We've chosen Tesla for the reliability, cost, and just their advanced technology and their battery systems. And on the generator side of things, we use a ultra low emissions Mitsubishi generator. And as Shay mentioned, the R2M2 or our RTM2 microgrid system doesn't always require a generator. It just really depends on the resilience needs and load of the project or the or the customer. And then a fourth component that kind of is the glue that makes everything work together is we have a partnership with Schneider Electric, and we utilize their EcoStruxure microgrid advisor, and we've put together some proprietary layer of controls to really strategically dispatch our assets and instantaneously update or tune the system hour by hour when there's climate changes. We're dispatching the equipment very strategically, and all the system is pre-engineered, and because of that, it allows for this quick development and accelerated commissioning. Basically, once we get past the contracting and the paperwork, it takes us 7 months to complete procurement of materials, engineering, construction, installation, and commissioning. So basically, when we have the equipment on the ground, we can get up and running in a month. So this is very different from traditional microgrid projects, which can take 1 to 2 years. And so, together from the technology and our installation process, we think this is a very ideal solution for Indian country. And the target end users are healthcare facilities, resorts, casinos, and multifamily housing, as well as grocery stores and food warehousing. So moving on to shovel-ready status, as Shay mentioned, and really what the speakers in this presentation have all mentioned, the time to act and deploy these microgrid systems on tribal lands is now. And we've been preparing for the deployment of these R2M2 systems, really not knowing which way the election was going to go or which funding was going to be available this year. But with the American Rescue Plan announcement and the DOE funding opportunities that we've discussed a bit, this can really be our time to our window of opportunity to accelerate progress and move the needle towards energy independence and economic equality on tribal lands. So, whether you decide to choose our microgrid offerings or one of our, or a competitor's offerings, the key to access, the key here is, being able to access the financing opportunities, and the priority is going to go to those projects that are shovel ready, meaning that the upfront development work is completed. So I'm just going to quickly go over what really defines shovel ready status, or what it's made of. And step one, you want to have an initial overview done. You want to identify the buildings and the loads that you want covered by the microgrid. You want to obtain have a history of the outages, be able to speak on the power quality issues of whether it's your casino, hospital, or community center. There's a pre-analysis process, which is a lot of information gathering. If you don't have a smart meter that already where you can download the electrical load data, you want to be able to put some meters on those loads and be able to start collecting some data. You also want to assess and figure out which areas you want for solar, if you plan on making solar part of your project, and really do a site assessment on the available electrical equipment, have single line drawings prepared. And then another key component that not everybody really has access to, and this is why you want to choose a partner consultant that has access to these tools, is the microgrid models, because the microgrid models really are what tell you what type of equipment makes sense and the size of the equipment that makes sense. So some of the common used industry, one of the common used industry platforms is DERCAM, Distributed Energy Resource Customer Adoption Model. And with that, as you're determining your financing and grant opportunities, you also want to include this financing and grants into the analysis. So they kind of go hand in hand. And you also want to find a partner that is prepared to not only help you figure out which grants you qualify for, but also incorporate these grants into the your financing package. And there's several different types of financing, but as you've heard, it's difficult to finance projects on tribal land. So one thing that I think is a suggested plan of financing is an energy as a service type of contract that requires no upfront costs, covers your engineering, covers construction, permitting, and interconnection, and has a flexible payment plan that begins once the microgrid is up and running. And then the last item here is permitting and legal. You just want to have a good understanding of the air environmental permitting layouts or environment. understand what's needed ahead of time, interconnection approvals. Some of these items take take longer time than others. So you want to really understand, what those are for your location, and tribal government approvals. I know with MPO, we're learning that, where the MPO guys they have a lot of experience with tribal energy projects. But we know that every tribe is different. Every tribal government has different requirements. And so you want to have a partner that understands these requirements. And so, with that, I'd like to move into the last part of my presentation, where I am happy to announce our first annual Scale Energy Independence Awards. And what these Energy Independence Awards are is that we're giving away three awards of up to $50,000 in development fees. And these awards are pretty much cover all the items that I just described in the shovel ready slide. Basically, we want to help certain projects gain this shovel ready status ahead of the American Rescue Plan funding release in September. So we're including all the items I've described into this. And I've already seen some things pop out in the chat, which I'm excited about and looking into. And so that's an opportunity for that. The selection criteria will be a need for resilience, a need for kind of critical load security, obviously application completeness when we send out the details on the application, and we'll also want some overall community support of the projects, whether that could just be a couple letters, whether it's from a landlord, business owner, or tribal council member. And the application information, we will send out more information, but you can also send us some questions to info@scalemicrogridsolutions.com. Submissions are due June 4th, 2021 by 5 p.m. and the awards will be announced on June 22nd, 2021. And the eligibility, buildings with critical needs. But with that, I think that's I'm up on time. But thank you all for your time, and again, special thanks to all of our speakers, Wahala, Michael, and John. And I will pass it on to Chris to lead our question and answer section. Thank you.
Thank you, Guillermo, and thank you, panelists. So we have some time, and I think we have a number of questions queued up, and so so we'll just go right to them. For LPO, Brian, if you're there, I don't know if he's available, but one of the questions is it possible to combine the loan program and the federal tax credit? So that's one question that was presented by our viewers today. While he's joining, think on that. For Scale, one of the questions is when it comes to development, how large and small can microgrids be? How large or small do they need to be viable? So either Guillermo or Shay can answer that one.
Perfect. I think Brian is with us, so maybe Brian.
I think I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes. Great.
Great. Okay. Great. Thanks. Pardon, Chrissy. I was kind of reconnecting to the audio. So run that by me again one more time, just so I can.
So the question, Brian, for LPO is it possible to combine the loan program office with the federal tax credit?
Oh, certainly. Yeah. So we've definitely in our portfolio been able to work with projects that work with tax credits. So that's definitely something we can work with, and something that we've been talking with internally about, again, how can we work with tax equity structures. So it's definitely something that we want to talk to you about, and it would be helpful if projects kind of have an idea of what that structure might look like. We're happy to provide kind of some feedback on what we can and can't do with that, but certainly something that we can work with, and we've worked with, in our other programs in the past.
Okay, thank you, Brian. Okay, turn to you, Shay and Guillermo. Question is, how big does a project need to be viable?
Sure, I'll take this one. Thanks, Chris. Yeah, it's a great question. So no, shouldn't say no project, but there's a wide range of sizes that work really well for microgrids, and I can speak to some of our experience. We're working on some projects in the water industry, as small as pumping stations with maybe only 100 square feet of land, for pretty compact projects there. And we're working on other multi acre campus style microgrids for looking at several megawatts of solar, several megawatt hours of energy storage, and combined heat and power CHP system as well. So the important factor for us, as I mentioned on one of my slides, is we really focus on these single customer style microgrids. There are kind of pilots, and there's some example projects now, and I'll speak to California, where the CPUC is exploring kind of community style microgrids, but they're not currently, there's not a free pass for developers like us to come in and build those larger community style microgrids. So if we're looking at individual buildings, certainly the larger you get, the more economies of scale you get, and the more attractive the economics get. But we really, we work on a wide range of sizes with the projects that we build.
Okay, thank you, Shay. This next one is for Director Johns. The question is in terms of coordination between different agencies. The last administration under Obama had the White House Council on Native American Affairs. Is there something like that being formed so that there's cross-agency coordination on support for tribal energy development, and in this case, microgrids?
Yes, so the White House Council on Native American Affairs had a meeting about 3 weeks ago, and I think it was the most attended of cabinet secretaries there, and it was amazing, and just shown how dedicated every agency is to Indian country. And there was a committee formed that's called Energy, Economic Development, and Infrastructure. And that committee, IE and Department of Energy, is co-leading. And we have yet to have our first meeting, but it's going to be happening within the next week. So we'll be working with Department of Commerce and Department of Transportation and other small business entities that are focused on kind of rural but urban communities. And but for IE, we want to coordinate with other agencies to see how, so we're not overlapping on certain things, and want to be also just as a space for us to share our priorities and how we can work together. So I do think microgrids is an area that we can definitely support. And I think that most facilities like hospitals and schools and tribal buildings are really seeing the need for microgrid implementation. So I appreciate the presentation earlier.
Thank you, Director. So this one is for Michael. The question is, has Kempo reviewed a tribal utility authority to work around the double taxation and control of energy use on the reservation?
The big problem with the dual taxation is the ownership of the assets. So even if we had a utility, if it made an agreement with an outside company that actually was the owner of the assets, and then we'd still be subjected to state intrusion on taxation. So I mean, if we buy it as if we had the resources to buy the turbines, generators ourselves, whether we did that as a tribe or did it as a utility, we still would not be taxed. So it relates to that ownership.
Okay, thank you, Michael. Another question, and this is for the entire group, nobody identified. The question is there potential for private industry to support transition on tribal lands? And what does that look like?
I'll take a crack at it, and then if anyone else wants to chime in. I saw that question come in kind of early on. Hopefully this presentation has helped to kind of inform an answer or a view on that topic, but our view is, absolutely the partnership that we have at scale with NPL, the various different resources that we all collectively have available from LPO and DOE and various other agencies to kind of help come together and turn these projects into a reality. Certainly, attests to the public-private and really tribal kind of partnership model that we're establishing here. So yes, from my end.
Okay. I'll answer. This is Chris. I'll also answer from an intertribal perspective. There is a group that I sit as a member of, the National Intertribal Energy Council, and one of their key pillars of working throughout Indian country is building relationships with private industries and working to address not only the policy priority of raising capital, but also expanding equity and ownership awareness through the industries as it relates to tribal energy development. And then the other side benefits also include just partnering with industry to really affect positive and necessary changes for energy development throughout Indian country. So I think at least in that regard, there is strong support for that.
And this is Brian. I can weigh in from the loan programs office perspective. One of the changes we made, I think it was last year, was to make tribal energy development organizations eligible for the tribal energy loan guarantee program, so that joint ventures that are majority owned and controlled by a tribe, but also do have some, a private, private investment in it, can also be eligible for our loan guarantees.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay. So there's a question I want to go back to Indian Energy. So the question is, when it comes to education of, say, Indian country on this, what can folks do to help educate not only tribes, their partners, and or the feds in terms of tribal energy development and the programs coming out of DOE? And one of the other questions related to that is, second part of this question, under EPA, they had the program that they, I forget the name of the program, but EPA had a program where they sent out dollars to create local tribal offices for work in EPA. Can that be done at DOE is the second question.
Yeah, I think I love this place we're at, because along with the equity, the executive order on equity, taking a look at every program and agency and the way that they are looking at how where dollars are going and what are the needs to reach communities that haven't been able to participate in this kind of transition to clean energy and the job creation opportunities. And I think all of that is we're in this kind of evaluation process, or that's how I see it, is just looking back at what DOE has been doing, but also how can we modify certain areas so that it is building the capacity internally for tribes, for local communities to have the opportunity to apply for grant assistance or technical assistance. And I think the EPA program is the GAP program, I think that was mentioned, the General Assistance Program that was mentioned, is to provide funding for staff for tribes so that there's that support, and that's a great idea. I love that idea. I think there could be something similarly done in all agencies, so that there is this kind of staff or people in tribal governments or nations that have that connection to resources. In regards to the EPA, they have that connection to EPA, and there's so much there to provide support for tribes to grow their environmental protection policies and programs, and raise money through federal agents or federal grant opportunities to build more programs. And I think that's the foundation. And I really feel like tribes often lack that staff person in it, or an energy office, or a grant writer to submit applications. And I think that's what we've been hearing a lot from comments and recommendations from tribes, is that there needs to be support for tribes, and what are ways that we can help. But I do think that's a great model, and we're looking at that right now, and we're looking at other ideas of helping tribes to build that internal capacity. The other thing is that philanthropy, I've seen philanthropy put in money to support tribal support positions in tribal nations, within their energy office, because they lack just staff to help support the build out of their energy plans. So yes, I do think that is a great idea. And if you all have suggestions, I am open, and I'll put my email in here and you can email me. And then also some of the links to our technical assistant requests. I think somebody was asking about that. Yes, so thank you.
Thank you, Director. So last question for the panelists, and I want to thank you before our time concludes. So in energy, there is this whole concept of a nexus. And so projects that have this nexus, so for example, energy, agriculture, what do you think there's an energy nexus to, for example, gaming? And question is, why hasn't that taken off in terms of support for energy development, energy microgrids in particular, because of the nexus that this industry in Indian country has to the tribal energy industry? Somebody want to answer to that? Make it very simple. Is there a nexus with energy and gaming?
So I can answer the first part. I can't answer on the why it hasn't been done more in the past, but there is absolutely a nexus there. I mean, one of the, I guess in one way, as we described, is that in addition to providing backup power for a casino, which requires critical operations, because those casinos can also serve as an emergency services center. So that's one way. But then also in terms of security, I mean, the casinos are a very important economic asset or asset for the tribe. They're very important for the tribal community. And if you could just imagine a power outage when you're in a casino, you're hot, there's money on the table. You can just imagine the chaos with the safety, people trying to evacuate the building. So there's absolutely a big nexus there. In addition to that, these casino resort areas are in these areas that have power blackouts in California with high fire threat zones. So we're going to be seeing more shutoffs to those areas. So there's absolutely a nexus there, and that's really what we're focused on with MPL here as well as we go into the REST conference. And Chris, I think I'll let you answer the later part of that question.
So the answer is we just need to educate more folks on the nexus between these different industries. And I think that's the job of all of us. I see that our time's really come to an end. There are a lot of great questions. We will also have these slides available for attendees. And then Director John's folks are asking for your email. We'll make sure they get a copy of that. And then lastly, I just want to thank you everybody again, and all our attendees. If you have any questions, please feel to reach out. We'd be happy to answer your questions. And I think that concludes our time. So much appreciation. Thank you.